Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Tech for Success Essential Guidance for SMEs webinar series. Thank you all for joining us for today's session. We'll soon be diving into our topic on embracing technology solutions that are going to support the working practices of your business. Before that, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Siobhan Lavelle, and I am a reputation management and crisis comms specialist. I am moderating today's webinar, so I'm going to guide us through the session today. First of all, you'll all have noticed that your microphones have been muted. This helps keep background noise to a minimum, make sure everyone can hear our speakers clearly. However, we really do want you to ask questions and share your thoughts on our topic today. So please use the Q&A function, which you'll see at the bottom of your Zoom screen. I will put your questions to our speakers on your behalf. As for previous webinars, we are going to be sharing a recording of today's webinar on YouTube, along with a summary of questions and key points. So please look out for links to that after today's session. And if you're using Twitter today, please use the event hashtag on your screen with your tweets. Thank you very much. So we will shortly be joined by Julian Wills, who is Managing Director of Timewade. Julian is a tech and IT specialist and founder of the Technology for Success initiative. He's going to be sharing some really good technology insights today that are either going to help you introduce new approaches to your business or maybe improve on what you're already doing. Before that, I'd like to welcome back Dan Pritchard. Dan is Managing Director of Astley Media and spoke to us a couple of weeks ago about how to approach communications and marketing in this new normal. And he is a key driver behind this webinar series. So welcome back, Dan.
Morning.
Good morning. So we're a few weeks into this webinar series now, and you've been getting lots of feedback. So what's the response been so far?
Yeah, no, it's really good, and I think the idea is a short session, interaction, questions during the program, but also in the days in between as well, which we've been getting, which is great. And that's one of the reasons actually we're really pleased Stephen Scone have joined us as well as the sixth partner. So now we have the whole kind of customer side with Insight 6, the people and HR with Alison and commissioning HR, Vikram, Minerva Lifelong Learning, ourselves looking at the marketing and the comms side, obviously Julian and Timewade, that technology piece underpinning all of these different things that we're looking at, and now Stephen's going on the legal and digital disruption that's going on right now. So we think we've built quite a good program, and we're kind of still looking for ideas just to kind of keep developing this as we go through different phases of this strange situation that we're in.
Great. It's great to see more and more businesses getting involved, isn't it? And also that we're taking such a holistic look at all the different aspects of things that businesses need to really be on their game on at the moment. Can you share some details about what's coming up in our future webinars?
Yeah, so today is week 3, so the technology strand, which is underpinning a lot of this around IT and tech, which Julian's going to be talking about, so I won't dwell on that. And obviously we've had the comms and marketing side, we've had teamwork and collaboration from Minerva Lifelong Learning, and then coming up, we're going to be looking at the whole customer experience in this kind of new normal. What does that look like? What do you need to be doing with Insight 6? Alison Lambert, Commissioning HR, who's also the chair of the CIPD in the Southwest. So she's right across the whole HR aspect in terms of the technicals, the legals, but also the practical and the good practice side of things in terms of thinking about your staff right now and for what is to come in terms of coming out of this phase. And then we have Stephen Scone and Ben Travers joining us, surviving a digital pivots, which will be really interesting as well in terms of the legal dimension to this, and more ideas welcome from people really. So yeah, a busy program these Friday mornings, and this is the first wet weather one we've done. So be ready, guys. Is that hopefully that we'll get through that.
Yeah, let's hope it doesn't affect the technology. We don't need that, do we? That's brilliant. Thank you, Dan. And it's really worth noting these future sessions. And, I'd encourage everybody to put them in their diaries so that you know what's coming up and that you join us in the future, because these webinars are really gathering some momentum here. So thanks, Dan, for that. Can I also just flag to everybody that we would like you to share your thoughts on our webinar series. So when this session ends later, a survey is going to automatically pop up on your screen. So please do just take a minute. It won't take very long, but if you can take a minute to respond to that, it will really help us to make sure that the series meets your needs. Moving on now, I'd like to welcome Julian. So welcome Julian to the webinar. As many of you know, Julian is Managing Director of Timewade and he is the founder of Technology for Success. So Julian is going to talk to us about how technology can help with some of the challenges we're all facing, help us explore possible solutions, and then plan how to really embrace this within our businesses. So morning, Julian.
Morning, Spawn.
Thank you for joining us today. And now I will hand over to you. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. So morning everyone. Thanks for joining us for our third session. I really appreciate you taking the time. Obviously really hope that everybody's safe and well and you know, doing the best that they can throughout this really sort of strange event, I guess. So my topic today is around optimizing tech for dispersed organizations, and what I really thought I'd do is trying to focus on the tools that maybe we already have that we're not using enough, some of the tools that we've started to use, and really how we can focus our efforts around sort of more collaboration, working together in better ways given the current situation, whilst kind of ensuring everything is safe and secure at the same time. So I've got a sort of bit of a small agenda, so we'll just sort of start with a bit of the scene setting, so what's going on right now, where we are, moving into kind of what's happened and the situation that we're in. Then we're going to kind of have a look at the concept of kind of building a digital hub, or really starting sort of a digital transformation in terms of, you know, maybe moving towards new ways of working and collaboration. We'll then sort of summarize that a little bit, and then give you some sort of ideas in terms of maybe a bit of a roadmap or a strategy in terms of how you can actually start implementing these things within your businesses and organizations. So just before we sort of get into it, I just thought I'd bring up this slide because I think this is really important and relevant. And whilst we're all you know, talking about working in teamwork, etc., what I really want to focus on is kind of the collaboration, and what I feel the difference between the two is. Obviously, you know, in teamwork, people are working together to kind of meet that shared goal. But I think really the difference is, whilst in a team, people are sort of combining individual efforts to achieve that goal. Working when people work collaboratively, personally, and from personal experience, we tend to get better results. We tend to get those results quicker as well. So I think utilising technology in order to help, you know, is a great thing that we all could be doing maybe a little bit more of. So in terms of kind of a bit of the why. So back at the end of last year, we commissioned our Technology for Success 2020 and Beyond survey, where we spoke to businesses in the Southwest about how they're using their technology, and one of the areas that we focused on was around productivity, and we asked questions about the types of barriers that were stopping sort of using best practice, etc., around this. And what we found, that the top three, perhaps a little bit unsurprisingly, were around cost, knowledge, and time. Now, the reason I'm talking about this is I think this is kind of really relevant now, because right now I personally feel that actually we kind of have some time. So whilst this situation is you know, incredibly stressful for lots of businesses, it's also perhaps giving businesses time to sit down and think, and then leading into the kind of the knowledge piece around that. Right now, there's loads of knowledge available, so people are you know, doing webinars like this. We're sharing knowledge, so I think there's probably never been a better time to try and sort of you know, educate yourself and find out about you know, new things and new ways of working, etc. I think one of the other things that we found around barriers was sort of employees and senior management resistance, which you know, are relatively high numbers. And I think, given the situation that we're in right now, employees and businesses have had no choice but to adopt new ways of working. So I think that leaves us with, you know, a great opportunity to you know, make some improvements. So when we start coming out of this, we are, you know, we have maybe some slightly different ways of working, some more efficient ways of working, etc. Also, I think even before the COVID-19 sort of situation really started, we're seeing a shift in landscape. So we're seeing that small businesses are now twice as likely to employ completely remote employees than they were 4 years ago. We're seeing globally that 52% of the workforce work from home at least once per week, compared to 25% in 2010. So we can see that shifting, but at the same time, we know that only 3.2% of our entire workforce actually work remotely. And prior to this, only 44% of businesses didn't even allow remote working. So I think it'd be really interesting to see what those stats look like now. But I think the point I'm trying to make is that things do happen. So there are natural disasters, weather events, you know, sick dependence, etc. So whilst this scenario is unprecedented, I think it's incumbent on us to make the most of the opportunity that we kind of currently have in order to work smarter. Also, in terms of IT environments, you know, that's changing. You sort of, you know, really gone are the days where all of your IT and tech was, you know, kind of kept in a nice square box or in an office, and perhaps the server was sat underneath the MD's desk, etc., and he'd take away disks and backups at night, etc. You know, that sort of way of working, in a way, was quite easy to, or at least conceptually, to secure and put boundaries and firewalls in place. But what we've been moving to is you know, many more mobile devices. So people not only have, you know, a laptop, but they also have iPads, phones, etc. And they expect it now as well. They expect to be able to access, you know, key information really wherever they are. And employees are working from more places, you know, be it at home like we are now, or you know, coffee shops, or on the road, etc. And that's leading to an exponential growth in cyber attacks. And that's just something that I just wanted to touch on a little bit, because I think if we look at the data, we see that small businesses are really prime targets for these types of attacks. And when we start to drill into the data a little bit more, we start to try and understand why. We start seeing reasons like, well, you know, clearly they've probably got smaller budgets when it comes to looking at IT security, etc. Or we know that perhaps those businesses are, you know, supported by, you know, an IT manager who's you know, tech savvy, but maybe not trained in cyber security, you know, or they have older computers that haven't been patched properly. And also what we see is lots of small businesses have a bit of a view that this just won't happen to them. But I think the point I want to make is that you know, they feel it won't happen to them because maybe they think their data is irrelevant. But that's not really the point of what the hackers are really doing now. So this is a business to them. So all they're really trying to do is disrupt your way of working in order to get you to pay them, you pay them sums of money. That's kind of what they're, you know, what they're doing. Oh, sorry. And then as we move on, we and we're finding that in our personal lives as well, we use apps, you know, on our mobile phones, etc. And that way of working, we're used to just logging onto the App Store, downloading an app, you know, starting to use data. Well, we're seeing that trend coming into our businesses as well, you know, which is great. But what we find then is that we're starting to silo data again. So information is in one system, and that system may not be accessible to everybody in the organisation. So I think some of the things that I'd like to talk about is how we can use the tools and technology that we've got available to us to kind of surface that data and allow more people to get easier access to that data without having to sort of go through different systems or ask different people for information, etc. And I think that sort of leads us really on to you know, the new normal or where we are right now. I think obviously we've seen an absolute huge uptake in using team tools like Teams or Zoom for holding video meetings. You know, people have had to suddenly start working from home and had to start communicating. And I think, you know, we've all seen the posts on social media, you know, with a video call and everybody smiling and happy, and that's great, and that's brilliant. But that's really one part of what these tools can do. There's loads more we can start lighting up and start to, you know, I think now we've opened Pandora's box in a way. You know, we can really go forward and start maybe those sort of digital transformation journeys that maybe we've been thinking about or maybe talking about. But I think now's the time to sort of move forward with them. So when we look at the sort of the tools that are available to us, so things like Teams or Slack, for instance. So you know, these tools are readily available. I think a lot of businesses that we see have Teams already, but just don't know how to use it, or just using it for chat or just for video, etc. And you know, there's so much more we can get out of it. So I thought what might be quite nice and perhaps also a little bit dangerous would be to maybe give you a little bit of a demo on how we can use maybe some of these tools a little bit. So without further ado, okay, so what I've got here is I've just flipped over into Teams, and this is live. So I think, as you saw earlier, somebody was trying to call me. So hopefully they'll leave us alone for a minute or two. But so what we see immediately within Teams, and Slack is very similar as well, is we create sort of groups or segments, and the benefit of this is kind of segmenting down to a project or possibly a business unit, etc. And within those teams, we can then sort of further separate out the data into what are called channels, and those channels then start to sort of roll up data. So we can see that we have a Facebook style feed of data going on here from within this team and this channel. But the great part about this is that this data is contextual to this particular team that we're working in. So we're not seeing, as we see on Facebook or we LinkedIn, a huge mass list of data, and then we have to scroll through to find the bit that we're really interested in. Straight away, we're kind of honed down to the bits of information that are relevant to us in terms of what we're doing at that moment. I think, you know, if we then start to think about things like document co-authoring, etc. So, you know, we've got sort of files, etc. in here, so we can go in and we can create new documents. We can start work on a document, but then we can start collaborating on this document, which I think is the really important thing. So we can get 3 or 4 people, maybe 10, 12, however many, almost all working on a single version of the same document and at the same time. And then, we've still got all our, usual functionality where we can sort of add comments into the document, review and mark up that document, etc. But where this starts to get really powerful is we can start to build conversations around this document. So we can tag in people and get their involvement. So obviously Jordan's away today, so he won't mind me sending him a message. But so we can send these messages, and these messages and these conversations are now relative to this document. And when we if we come out of this document, we can and we go back to our sort of feed, we can see that straight away we can see Jordan's been tagged in a comment here, and he can see straight away the bit of information that's relevant to him, that we want him to work on or communicate with. Now, of course, we can, I think also this whole concept of tagging people and using, emojis, because everybody loves a dancing penguin, etc. But I think the point is that this is the kind of way that we work. This is the way that we're used to starting to communicate with people, in our personal lives through Facebook, LinkedIn, etc., Twitter, whereby if something's relevant to somebody, we tag them in there. We get them to respond and collaborate with us back and forth, etc. And I think it's just a great way of sharing some information without without having to type loads and loads of words, etc. Other things that we can do within this team is start to bring in other bits of information from other areas or different parts of the business. So, for instance, we've got a feed from Yammer here. So I don't know if anybody uses Yammer, but Yammer is kind of a bit like Facebook for business. But within our Yammer feed, we've got a feed that's relevant to this particular piece of work or this particular group that we're working in. So again, we're getting contextual, relevant information all the time, which I think is really important. So maybe to sort of put that another way and kind of relate it to sort of a real world scenario, maybe. So we were speaking to a customer a few weeks ago, whereby they've recently been taken over by a company in the States, and they have and what they're trying to do is they're trying to now sort of sell their products through the channels in the States. And what was happening was that as the sales team in the States are trying to learn about the new products and trying to find out information about the products that they'll be selling, well, they were sending the MD of the company in the UK emails at 10, 11 o'clock at night, because obviously there's a time shift of 6 to 8 hours, etc. And the MD was having to respond because they want information there and then, right? So, and the problem as well with sending that email is that kind of it's directed at one person and one person's responsible for sending it. But what we suggested was maybe let's set up a team so we can invite those external parties, if that makes sense, into the team. We can share the documentation that they need, so the product specifications within that team. And so when the guys are looking for information, they don't have to send emails. They can come straight into here. They can find the information that they want. We haven't had to open up complicated VPNs, etc. Those types of things. And also, we can then rely on sort of the peers or everybody else in the group. So if one of the sales reps had a question about a product, they could ask it related to that product or that document within the team, and then other people could respond as well. So I think maybe I think that's a great sort of example of how you can start using these type of things, and these teams may as I said at the beginning, maybe related to kind of a business unit, so finance or admin, etc. But they don't have to be, and they can be project based, etc. It's really easy to do sort of basic project management, etc. in here, so you can build a task list, etc. And again, it's all relevant to the piece of work that we're working.
Julian, can I just ask you to pause there for a moment, because I'd like to ask you a couple of questions, if I may.
Yeah.
Between the two of us, between you and me, I'm a bit of a self-confessed perfectionist and control freak when it comes to document management. So how does somebody like me adapt to working this way? Because I will be honest, I would worry that I would miss something or miss comments or input from a colleague, and that a document that I have ownership of would no longer be my responsibility in the same way.
Well, I think that's a great question, and I think actually I think what this does is this directs us into the right place at the right time. So I personally find that or I have scenarios, for instance, where we're working on a document collaboratively, or before we were in this sort of new world, and we'd send an email. So we'd start work on a document. That document may get sent out to 3 or 4 people. 3 or 4 people would then maybe add their comments, etc. And then I'd get 3 or 4 emails back with the same document, and then I'd actually be stuck with trying to work out, okay, so which one's the latest one? So I've got comments on one that's not on the other, and trying to piece that information back together. So by keeping everything within our cloud as such, we've got full control of that document, and we can also see everything that's going on with it. And the great part of this is it's got built-in version control as well. So we've still got full control of the document. We haven't sent it out, and we don't know where that document then potentially ends up, etc. So it's contained within our little world, I suppose. So does that help? Does that answer?
Yes, it reassures me. I think I need to be brave, but it does reassure me. We're getting some really good questions in, which I'm going to keep for the end of our session, but I will just ask you one more before we move on to the rest of your presentation. So, you are making this feel very achievable, but this is a new approach for many of us. And I think one of the challenges that we're seeing and that is coming through in some of the questions is, how do we make this work with the other apps or processes that we might already be using? How do we coordinate this approach across different devices and kind of merge this with what people are already doing?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and I'll come on to some of that in a bit more detail when I'm summing up. But I think one important thing to say is perhaps I think maybe some of the things that I've been showing you within this sort of demo are maybe more sort of Microsoft centric. But the great thing is there's a huge expanse of kind of integrations into hundreds of apps. So if you're using Trello, for instance, to do a bit of project management, or Jura, or you want to start a process around digitally signing documents, etc., there are literally thousands of integrations with third-party products that are already built, and literally at a click of a button you can, or perhaps you wouldn't want users doing this, but your admin team, etc., can just add in straight away and start surfacing those bits of information that are held elsewhere. So where I talked about those different apps to begin with, it's highly likely that there's already a connector for it, and if there isn't, I'm sure there'll be one coming very very short.
Thank you, Julian. That's great. So please, everybody, keep your questions coming through, and I'll be putting those to Julian shortly. Julian, back to you for the rest of your presentation, and we'll be getting to questions in 5 minutes or so.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you. So I think that's maybe a polite way of asking me to speed up a little bit. So what we do is now maybe just sort of start to sort of sum up really and summarize some of the things that I think are important in terms of the new normal and helping to achieve what I'm sort of referring to really as true collaboration, over and above just standard teamwork. So So, and I think that starts with, reliable online meetings. Well, I think we can put a massive tick in the box there. We know that technology works now. We've all potentially been forced into using it way more than we ever might have used to. We're all used to creating these meetings and now sharing information via them. So I think we've started that journey. The growth has been exponential. So I think the take up in terms of video calling on Microsoft Teams has been something like 600%, which is just amazing. And I think more importantly, point to make is that it's code. So the cloud, the services, Microsoft have been able to roll it out, and companies like Zoom as well, etc. And the other important thing is these tools work from more than one device. So you don't have to be sat in front of your laptop. So there's apps on your iPad or your Android phone, etc. And you can be in a Zoom call or a Teams video call as if you were sat in front of your laptop. It just works, and that, I think that's a really important point to make as well. And then I think moving on to where we touched on sort of online file storage and co-authoring. So I think one of the problems that we've seen from our customers is that when we started transitioning and all of our customers started moving to remote working very suddenly a few weeks ago, they were getting set up on VPN, and they were they had access to the information that they need, but they found it was maybe quite slow, and accessing those files, etc., was difficult to some extent. So by moving that data effectively in the cloud, we make it much closer to people, but at the same time we're able to build in lots of layers of security as well, which is super important. We can control who can see and share the data, and as I said, by co-authoring or allowing somebody to share or view a document or a spreadsheet, etc., we're not sending that email out to somebody, and then ultimately we don't know what happens potentially with that document after it's sent. And again, these tools are available right now. They've been available for ages, but Word, PowerPoint, great, but also Google Docs, etc. So depending on whether you're a sort of Google or Microsoft type company, both options are available to you. And then moving, so all of these things kind of lead up into allowing businesses to work much more securely and much more efficiently. So getting access to that data and that shared hub of information and being able to find it. I don't know the amount of times that we start working on a document, and then you spend the first 10 minutes trying to search for a really complicated folder structure on a server somewhere just to find the document, etc. So these type of tools allow us to solve those problems, and get rid of those kind of like version control headaches that we all have. So then I thought it'd be good to sort of just sort of finish up really now in terms of how do you get started, and I think anybody who's listened to me speak before will perhaps feel that I sound like a broken record, but for me it's like anything IT related or business related. You have to build a strategy, and that strategy has to be aligned to the goals of the business. And we break that down into 4 chunks. So with review, develop, implement, and improve. And to begin with, you have to review. So you have to understand where you are, and to understand where you want to get to. So start looking at what you've got. Talk to your users. Talk to your partners. Talk to your technology partners. They're used to doing this. They're doing it all the time for other customers. So don't be afraid. I think then moving into sort of the development aspects, it's really important that you then build your plan. But what I'd say is don't overcomplicate it. Don't try and climb the mountain in one go. Break it down into chunks, but be clear about what you're setting out to achieve. And then you move into, if you will, the implementation stage. And again, sort of related to the previous point, sort of start small, but be bold, be agile. Don't be afraid to change. And if something's not quite working, don't be afraid to then maybe go back and ask for help again or start again, because honestly, when you really start to get into this, and you really the improvement that you'll see will throughout the business will be enormous. And then the improvement section. So share those learnings with the rest of the business. Understand what worked and what didn't work as you start rolling it out elsewhere in the business. And I think the other really important things that you have to do is you have to track your progress, and you have to be honest with yourself, and you also have to measure adoption. So it's important that you know whether the users are using it or not, because the last thing you want is to slip back into the old ways of working. And then find, like I say, get that feedback again and start again. You always start at the beginning again, work back through, and it's a revolving circle that never ends, because ultimately there are more and more apps coming online all the time that you may want to kind of introduce and solve another problem within the business. I think if I've got one tip though that we see people try to do, is that they try to pick up their file server and their file structure and just kind of throw that straight away into Teams or SharePoint or something, and it just won't work. You will fail, because effectively all you're going to end up with is that complicated structure in a different place with another layer in front of it. But I think that was really what I wanted to talk about today. I hope you found it useful. It sounds like there's some questions, so I'll be glad to answer them for you.
That's great, Julian, thank you so much. And yes, we do have lots of questions that are coming in. So what I'll do is I will start with the broader questions, and we will answer as many as we can. Some of them are very specific, so we'll get through those. We've got about 5 minutes or so for questions, so Julian, you might need to be brief, but I will mention that there is a LinkedIn group to support this webinar series, and I'll give details of that later, so that might be somewhere where people can go for further conversation on this. Julian, to start with then, our first question is, how easy is it to roll this out? Somebody's given an example where they've tried it and failed. It hasn't worked because tools like email and Trello were already in use, so people didn't really want another system.
Sure. So I think the key things comes back to really having a strategy and knowing what you're trying to achieve. And I think probably, and the problem that we find is that actually what we're trying to do is we're trying to move away from Outlook. So I think if we think about in the olden days where we start with a bit of paper, we mark up that bit of paper and pen, put it on somebody's desk, they pass it around, that would go around. That kind of then evolved into email, I suppose, where the same thing was happening. But then we end up with all of those type of issues around version control, etc. So by having a central hub that's easy to find the information and easy to work on it together, I think kind of starts to mitigate those problems once people can start to see it working. But got to have a plan, got to get the buy-in, and again having that integration, for instance, into Trello directly into that team will really help as well, I think. So hopefully that sort of answers that question.
Yeah, that's great, Julian. So who should be responsible for driving this collaborative culture? Does it require a new form of management, for example?
Yeah, I think it does. I think it's got, for me, this is something that's kind of cross-company. So clearly senior managers in the business need to be stakeholders and engaged in this. But I think what we'll see is that the kind of the younger people within the businesses are really the ones that can pick this up the quickest and help that adoption and help change that culture within the business. So it's kind of, it involves all parts, but definitely, again, I think the conversation has to start at the top, and the business has to want to kind of, improve. And again, it comes back again to having a strategy and making sure that that strategy links into the rest of the objectives of the business.
That's interesting, and actually what you've just said kind of leads on to another question really nicely, which is Peter's asked if it's best to start with an individual project with a limited number of people involved, and then roll it out, or try to get everybody involved from day one. And you've just mentioned that some people have more of an appetite for this than others, so what's your view on that?
Yeah, definitely. I would definitely start with a smaller project. I think it's almost impossible to change the complete culture in and the way that people work in one go. Definitely start with a smaller, maybe a very specific project, maybe something that you're working on. So, be it you're building a new website, if that makes sense, you may have your marketing team involved and senior management who maybe have an overview, and maybe you've got somebody from finance in there as well. But then you've also got those external parties who may be building that website for you. So definitely start small, and really grow and like I say, understand what works and what doesn't work, and then use what you've learned to then roll it out to the other areas of business.
Okay. And what about, do you have any guidance for how you might train a team that's working remotely that may not be particularly technologically advanced or experienced, and would normally require quite a lot of significant hand-holding to adapt to this? How would you approach that?
Yeah, so I think that is a difficult question, to be honest. I don't think there's a really straightforward answer, but I think ultimately people have had to adapt. We've opened Pandora's box, I think. So people's mindsets, I feel right now, and certainly from talking to businesses and their employees, is they're kind of right now that they understand the situation that we're in, and everybody's much more adaptable to change right now. So I think it comes back to having a clear strategy and working with those people, making sure you spend enough time with them, getting their input and their feedback as well throughout the journey.
What about using case studies from other businesses to see how other people have done it? Is that a way forward? Yeah,
definitely. So that can really help, because I think sometimes the difficulty is, okay, you kind of know you want to do it and you feel it's the right thing to do, but without maybe having seeing somebody who's actually done it. And that's why I think it's so important to involve third parties and maybe talk to other businesses or talk to your technology providers, because like I said, they'll have been doing this with other businesses, and they'll have lots of different things, and I assure you, we've made lots of mistakes when trying to implement this, but it all comes back to learning, and if you can get that feedback early on, you're much more likely to avoid going down a rabbit hole.
Okay, I've got a challenge for you now, Julian, because we've got 3 very technical questions. Okay. So I'm going to give you 20 seconds for answers for each of these questions. So okay, if you're up for that. So which is the better internal video conferencing platform, Zoom, Cisco WebEx, or Teams?
Okay. Right now, I think Teams for me is the best one. Zoom is great, but you said 20 seconds, sorry, but I think it's important. And what I would recommend is having a look at Ben Travers from Stevens Scone. He's done a bit about the T's and C's in Zoom, because there is a bit of maybe worry about Zoom right now, but some of it's unfounded, I think, but it's definitely worth checking out his post on that on LinkedIn.
Brilliant, thank you. Next one then, where are files that are uploaded on Teams stored, and can it be configured for SharePoint, or is it OneDrive for Business? How does that work?
So actually, it's utilising SharePoint behind the scenes. So it actually uses SharePoint. So for every team that you create, it creates a SharePoint site and uses that. And this is why I think it's so powerful, because I think lots of businesses have struggled with SharePoint, but it is such a powerful bit of technology. But actually, where we found where businesses have tried to implement SharePoint and failed, they've been able to implement Teams. And when you've told them that SharePoint behind the scenes, they're like, oh wow, I didn't understand that. So I hope that answers the question.
Yes, thank you. And last one, is there a link between Sage 200, CRM and Teams?
Well, there isn't such a direct one, but it's very easy to create. So for instance, we have, we use Power BI for reporting, etc. So you can run Power BI reports and surface data within Teams. So for instance, maybe you've got a team that the example I gave earlier that's sharing product information. You may, for instance, want to feed about stock levels related to those products, etc., and that could come directly out of your finance system, Sage or CRM, etc.
Brilliant. Thank you. I hope you don't mind me putting you on the spot there, but that was really
no problem at all.
Julian, you've shared so much value with us today, and I thank you so much for that. And I hope everybody listening is feeling inspired to take some practical steps forward on this now. We are pretty much out of time, so I'm just going to remind everybody that our next session is on Friday of next week. That's the 24th of April, when Rhian Huxtable is going to be talking about customer experience, which obviously is something we're all very acutely aware of trying to get right at the moment. You will see details of our other future sessions on your screen any minute now, and you'll find links to book into these sessions on the emails that will follow, which will also have links to materials from today. Before we go, there is a LinkedIn group, which I mentioned earlier on, for participants of the webinar who want to share further ideas, and for people who are involved with Technology for Success. You can share ideas, ask questions, connect with others. Details are on your screen now, so please do join that group and you can continue the conversation there. So that just leaves me to thank you all for joining us today. Please do take a moment to complete our survey, which is going to pop up on your screens any second now. And we'll look forward to seeing you at 8:30 next Friday. Good luck till then, and stay well, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.